Hello, neighbor. I'm Robert Burns, and welcome once again to another edition of Sound Off Louisiana. And I have Mr. Billy Broussard with us. He's always got an open invitation. Very briefly, he basically got cheated out of approximately $1 million of hurricane debris cleanup work in the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Rita. We've been very intrigued by a recent article that came out. Now, it does involve the medical field. It involves Medicare fraud, but let me just briefly state, and we're going to give a link for it. It's a different day now. People can say what they want about Donald Trump and this, that, and the other, but AI is a game changer because of the ability to literally audit instead of a tiny fraction of claims, of whether it be FEMA claims, whether it be Medicare claims. AI is obviously going to make it possible to do darn near a 100% audit, and that's how a lot of fraud is going to be caught. And in this article, the Justice Department announced on Friday, June 30th, that we're going to give you the link for it, a massive level of Medicare fraud in which they are charging 300 defendants with such fraud, and in one case it involved billings of over $1 billion. And I'll briefly state that well, Mr. Broussard, why don't you chime in, because I think you made an interesting parallel, and I'd like for our audience to start to think about that. So why don't you chime in?
I got the article, me and you discussed it back and forth a little bit, and right away because of a situation I've been in the past, I thought of similarities, but at the same time, what I thought about was, wait a minute, this is identical practically to the Dr. Akula case that you went through all the days at trial, etc., and actually reported on that very much. And what I've understood about that case was, it's who's actually making the call, like the doctor's orders on what's eligible, who's eligible, etc. Because whoever's making that call is the one actually responsible for possibly the damage and or the fraud. Because you have, say, a doctor, like in that case, there was a doctor, yes, he provided services.
You're talking about Dr. Blaylock.
Dr. Blaylock. So Dr. Blaylock provided services, money that he said, no, he collected for this work that he was doing, but he wasn't the one making the doctor's orders on that particular client, patient. He just said, I was giving it.
In fact, I'll help you out a little bit there, Mr. Broussard, because as you pointed out, I was at the trial. Furthermore, we did a full feature on nothing but Dr. Blaylock, because as you point out, that's all he was doing. And I think you're making the point that that's all you were doing was taking orders. You are literally Dr. Blaylock in the matter that entails you. And you are correct, Dr. Blaylock did get to keep the money because he did nothing wrong. Right. He followed orders the same way you did nothing wrong. Okay. However, once the FBI started looking into all this and they contacted Dr. Akula, quite understandably, he said, "Look, I got to get out of here." Okay.
Dr. Blaylock, when they contacted Dr. Blaylock, you said.
No, I said Dr. Akula. Okay, they contacted Dr. Right. They contacted Dr. Blaylock. Thank you for correcting me. He said, "I got to get out of here." But the point is, he was just taking the order. He was just doing his job. It was not his job to make a determination of whether this was eligible or not. In fact, he said that wasn't his role. He said he has now learned that the services, he said, testified, we're going to give a link for the Dr. Blaylock testimony. That was a critical day of that trial. It was, in my opinion, and I said that during the trial, he was by far the governor's best witness. He was the most credible witness. He was the witness who did not have any kind of axe to grind or had anger with Dr. Akula. So you're making the point, and I think it's an excellent point, that in this matter involving the Gravity Drainage District and FEMA and GOSEP, because all were parties to this, you were nothing more than Dr. Blaylock. I'm going to make sure I get it right. You were nothing more than Dr. Blaylock. Am I right?
Exactly. Even though these companies say, we're just on the back end, we're just a monitoring company. They use the term monitoring company, which the contract, bottom line, the guys out there, they were contracted under WIT Associates. WIT Associates had the contract with GOSEP. Then WIT Associates, apparently somebody that helped run the company had a sister-in-law that had a company called RMI that was actually out there. Come to find out. But when I got to the job, the man hands me a card, and I can send you a copy of the Louisiana seal saying, I'm GOSAP.
Right.
So you get there and you go, this guy's saying he's GOSAP. Then later they say, well, no, he doesn't work for GOSAP, and we don't know why he put a Louisiana seal on the card. But when you introduce the guys, the debris guys, picking up the debris that taking orders, and the guy comes up, I'm GOSAP, and they tell you he's GOSAP, and everybody understood, all the other people in the project understood him as GOSAP. No. Come to find out he's a guy that works for a contract, that has a contract with someone else that has a contract with GOSAP. So the point is, the ones really that are responsible making the calls, when he was making those determinations, and hey, this is eligible, and that's, even though they might say, well, he wasn't supposed to do that, that's what happened. And so in that, the monitoring company / the ones making the, just to say doctor's orders, should be responsible for the damages, just like in cases where, you might have an issue, like we talked about a case earlier, that was Meyer and Associates in Calcasieu Parish, in regard to
that was wound up being a $5 million judgment, as I recall.
At least.
And it was a gravity drainage district.
And interesting, Robert Kleinsmith was the district attorney's office, represented the drainage district. The claim originally was with the drainage district, but then the judge says no. The damages will go from the damages to the drainage district, but immediately, what you call that type of case?
It was cross-claim or countersuit.
Right, where it goes immediately to the engineering firm.
Yeah, exactly.
That cause the damages.
Exactly.
So the point is similar to this situation.
Very similar.
Every drainage district, every applicant parish, when they're applicants, they're trying to get as much money they get their hands on. But when they hire and contract these monitoring companies to come in there, they're supposed to have a certain job to ensure that only eligible debris is being removed. In this case, that's not what they did. They just went out there and they started making calls, making determinations, ordering, directing, and we, just like Dr. Blaylock, I was just there going, okay, the contract says, they would make the final determination, the government representative. That's who these people were. So we just took orders. So on the back end, if it's argued, well, was it eligible, was it not? I have no idea. You'd have to ask them. So now we have more and more information.
You were just told to pick it up.
Right, and I learned, just like Dr. Blaylock, wait a minute. Maybe, like in his case, he goes, maybe Dr. Akula did some things he wasn't supposed to do. Well, we learned on the back end, maybe this, this monitoring company did things in the drainage district, things they weren't supposed to do. I didn't know at the time. They just said, hey, this is all eligible. So we're just taking orders. And that's how these projects work. So the point is apparently Dr. Akula, they held him accountable. And now you're talking about 300
that the government will have to prepare. And I think this should be a warning to doctors or to any federal agency out there. It's a game changer. Let me just say this. Meta is building I think it's a $10 billion facility up in North Louisiana. It's a great thing. We're going to have jobs. Companies like that don't just plow money into something like that and say, we don't really care if we get a return on our investment. Of course they care if they get a return on their investment. They expect to get a return on their investment, and it looks like one way they may get that return is rooting out fraud by use of AI. So I am thrilled to death because as a former federal government direct employee, although the FDIC is separate and distinct technically, they're still governed by the federal rules. It's still a federal bureaucracy. I have seen firsthand the kind of waste that can be in any organization, and I think the FDIC was probably one of the more efficient ones. So while there may be a lot of negative headlines about Donald Trump and the Elon Musk and the Doge, I'm just telling you, we had an agency in New Orleans that nobody even knew existed, and the next thing you know, all these jobs. Let me tell you something, a lot of those jobs are darn near meaningless, okay? Right. And I think the payoff of AI in terms of catching fraud because of AI's unique ability to do, they made it really clear in the Akula trial. The government's witnesses made it very clear we have to rely upon honesty and integrity because we only have the ability to audit a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of all the claims submitted. It looks like AI is going to dramatically increase.
And think about that statement you just made. Where did we hear that before? At another time, even before that, at the Legislative Auditor's Office. Yeah. Moorhead said, look, we just assume everyone's operating.
That's exactly what he said.
In good faith. Exactly. So the point is, are we going to need these supposedly monitoring companies? Are we going to need all these supposedly checks and balances and all these people to have not just employees, but contractors like Wood Associates makes so many millions of dollars off the state of Louisiana. Mm-hmm. And the point is, on the back end, it's like, We had a meeting last year with the director then, Thibodeau. He said, no, these documents, they're on an Excel spreadsheet. They have to exist. He said, I'm gonna go get them and I'll get them back. I'll get back with y'all immediately and get them to y'all. Comes back, they don't exist.
Don't exist.
And
Imagine that.
I have emails where they're saying, some of these people talking, about documents, we need to make all this go away. So it's like, like I said, that's why I looked at it. I look forward to seeing what you're gonna come back with. So the point is just AI might not need all these people because they're not helping in many cases. They're actually causing more trouble, just to say than help, because if there's colluding going on, whatever's going on, the checks and balances on what they're paying for and what's actually being done in the field, a completely different story. But if somebody signs off on it. Well, maybe AI is going to start catching on to a lot of this fraud.
Well, and we've already seen some advances. In the old days, when you went into your doctor's office, you had no idea what was going to end up, the amount being paid. It was weeks and weeks and weeks, and say, okay, now you give them that card and that claim gets submitted literally in real time, and they say, okay, your balance is $18.92 or $85.67. You put out your credit card and everything's already right there. If they can do that now with AI in its infancy, just think what the future holds, because they wouldn't be putting in these $10 billion. All right, I want to move on to just a couple of other quick topics as we wrap it up. You had some pretty strong frustrations at the trial, and we're going to give a link for when I first did Mr. Broussard's trial, because the judge, in my opinion, and look, whether you love Jeff Landry or whether you hate Jeff Landry, because there are people on both sides, trust me, obviously. This judge was not a very strong Jeff Landry fan.
Right.
He made remarks from there that taken what I called pop shots back then. I stand by my commentary that it was pop shots, and I believe that alone should have had this case sent back, and he had recused himself. When you are that biased against any attorney that's involved in the case, you have no business. And it's one thing for him to be that biased, but to openly tout it in court, make those kind of flippant and condescending remarks.
And I gotta say, I took the bait, because when he said, they got a commercial out there, choose your lawyer carefully, I really was like, and I was upset. I actually got with Jeff Landry, who's now the governor, and said, look, I was mad. I said, you know what the judge said? He said it was like, it's your fault. Choose your.
He made it crystal clear it was his fault.
He said, well, that's the judge's opinion. And I said, but I was furious. And he could tell I was upset. And he was like, look, Bill, I'm sorry, but the judge, I took the.
Bill would be short for Billy, I see.
But then I had to turn. Now, as upset as I was with who now is the governor, I have to publicly say I am sorry, because I took the bait that the judge threw out there and said, oh, like bottom line, you might have had a case, but they got a commercial out there, choose your lawyer carefully. But we're back to now evidence that I've been getting my hands pieces of the puzzle that, you know what, Jeff Landry hit the nail on the head from the beginning. He said it's simple, Bill, we just got to figure out what's the scope of work and what was the money supposed to pay for. And then I told him, I said, I know they went to get a change order / version for this additional work we were doing at the time, because here's all the emails to support, etc. So he files the lien based on all this information I gave him. Then we go through the trial, and a lot of people got involved. Even some state attorneys at GOSAP got involved. So no, this never happened. Now, not to, just to say, now after communicating with Kevin Davis, who was the director later when he was helping us, Senator Mills sent him an email just saying, when he said, have been asked to contact you to respectfully request a meeting with Senator Mills and Mr. Broussard to discuss and identify what PW version 1 additional scope of funds in regards to the Indian Bayou project was originally obligated for. So bottom line, I now have an email where Mark DeBosia, that signed off on this, sent an email to Kevin Davis, practically saying version 1, $453,000, $27.60 to account for additional eligible debris identified during the work.
Which would be due to you, exactly.
Right, additional contract work. So when we had these meetings with Kevin Davis, he says, no, y'all made a request. We didn't get this additional money. And why didn't y'all give this money to the contractor? He did, apparently he did the work.
You did the work. Nobody's disputing that.
It's it's everywhere. But the point is why did the courts, and why did the information that was provided to the courts, why was that completely separate? And they said, that money had nothing to do with Mr. Broussard. So now we got a completely different story. Some people produced the attorney Ben Ply produced an affidavit. came into the court. I can show the transcript. Said, Your Honor, yes, they can come to us and make that request, but you know what? For their reasons, they didn't do that. But you know what? Now we got proof that they did. So apparently some people misled the court. I don't know what you call that, lies, but I'm not an attorney. But just to say, I have now my hands on this information. So the point is, and I believe Kevin Davis, when the day comes, I've asked him, and he agreed that he would meet with me about this. He, talked to me the other day. He was out of town, etc. But the man was trying to set the record straight. But for whatever reasons, even when I tried to present some of this stuff to the judge just blew up. I mean, I said, look, Your Honor, there's even documents right there where the parish, Kelly Fontenot, was saying we need an additional $350,000 to finish the contract. And from the bench, he goes, well, maybe she meant project. Maybe she didn't mean contract. Well, you putting words in her mouth. This is what she said.
Yeah, the judge is practically arguing the defendant's case for them from the bench.
Right.
In that matter, maybe she meant.
Right.
Well, Mr. Broussard and
I gotta say this too.
So,
not paying me was the big deal. Over there, just like we see all the flooding in Texas, there was flooding in 2006, a year after Hurricane Rita. So bottom line, this was also, you ask me, information they didn't want the public to find out about why they truly flooded in 2006. And the truth of the matter is the bayou had been congested for ages. They told the constituents and everybody, hey, the bayou is Hurricane Rita debris. No, that bayou was congested for ages.
We already know that because state police, for all of its shortcomings, did launch an investigation into the Sinker Cypress deal. And it was a lot of Sinker Cypress. You don't get Sinker Cypress from something that just got blown into the bayou for our recent hurricane.
2006, they had this major flood, and they wanted everybody, oh, look, the reason you flooded, I heard like 500 people, they wanted to tell them, hey, this all caused by Hurricane Rita. And then on top of that, we don't have the funds to go there after a storm. Guess what? Yes, $200,000 what the original contract was for. Even if they would have done the scope of work, the original scope of work, they had during the same time that this flooding happened, the drainage district, the superintendent was doing work for gain of one on some private property. I think
I remember that.
Brook Inc.
I remember that.
$200,000 that the superintendent got prosecuted for. So they could have took their workers, their money, and their equipment and cleaned Indian Bayou and could have prevented that flood of 2006.
Wow.
But the truth of the matter is they were doing whatever the politics were there and why they were doing this, God only knows. But the point is that disaster could have been prevented if they would have took their time, effort, and money that they had. They spent it on something that they weren't supposed to, where it wasn't even, the guy got prosecuted. But it's understood. The constituents never got their money back. They just said, oh, let's just not talk about getting the money back. But the point is they could have prevented that disaster of 2006. So I think a lot of information, when you're a judge or you're district attorneys, Klein Smith, DeRozier, they knew what was going on about the drainage issues. But the point is they wanted to keep it hush-hush. They didn't want their constituents to know why they truly flooded. So,
well, I'm only going to mention very briefly, as we all know, Mr. DeRozier was obviously preoccupied with running basically a money laundering gift card program. In fact, we'll give a link for that. We hadn't talked about that at all. We're going to give a link for it. I'm not going to go into the details here because we're, kind of keeping this short. So, but I will say this in wrapping up. I would love to be able to sit down with former parish president Kevin Davis, and if he'd like to go on sound off with this, I would love for that to be the case because he was an advocate for you in getting this thing fixed.
Well, also I have to say, it was because at that meeting we requested, we said, here's all these documents. First, I said, here's the truth. I didn't know he had just gotten this email about the money. He didn't walk in there and say, here, I just got this email. I was briefed by Mark DeBosier. He walks in and present your case. And when I started throwing facts to him, and he said, okay. I said, well, why did you produce these documents with your signature? And I started dropping them in front of him, and it's a completely different story. He looks at it, which were used in the police report. He looks at them, he goes, we can fix this. He said, first of all, and he looks at Senator Mills, he goes, yes, that's my signature, but I did not draft these documents. Ben Plyer drafted these documents. So there were documents also with his signature that misled state police in their investigation and the courts. So the point is, for whatever reasons, there was a lot of bias in this case. Like you mentioned, the judge attacking, my attorney.
Right.
And now I have to apologize. I'm sorry, because I did take.
You're apologizing to the governor? To
the governor, because he was going. The judge said, "Oh, y'all try to bully your way filing that illegal lien," and all these different pop shots that he was making And I was getting more and more furious.
Aggravated. Who can blame you?
With my attorney, then, and even in conversation I had with him, now I'm sitting and looking at all this looking at the facts, he actually knew that, no, there's something that happened here, we just got to prove it. But because of fraud, etc., they led the court to believe, oh no, that had nothing to do with Mr. Broussard. But now we have information to prove. But the point is, the judge went way over about actually attacking him, and if he had that much bias against him, and he had that much personal whatever into this case, animosity, and he didn't want the public to really know why they flooded, he should have recused himself.
I totally agree, and I want to say one last thing very briefly as we close. Many of you will recall that Kevin Davis had put his name in the hat for the State Police Commission vacancy right now from Jared Rickey. He will not be, he did not make the cut. I'm just letting everyone know he did not make the cut. I would go ahead and state the 3 names who have. However, I don't want to preempt the governor. There are 3 names. Dillard University supplied 3 names, and Governor Landry has 10 days from today to make a decision on those 3 names. If he does not make a decision, then there is an individual who is first on the list, and that individual will be the new state police commissioner. So the only reason I'm holding back is I want to try to defer to the governor if they so choose to make a press release or whatever they want to do. But I do want to let everyone know at this time it's not going to be Kevin Davis. So that just hang tight for about 10 days, because one way or the other it will either default to the first individual on that list, or he can name one of the other 2.
And I have to say, Kevin Davis was my original choice. I would have liked to see him. But at the same time, I will say this. The rumor of who maybe I think was a real good choice.
Well, you be careful though, because nothing's finalized until that's why I don't want to jump ahead of the governor. He's not made any choice yet, Billy. So
I think if he chooses him, I'm really going to be excited.
Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. But there's been no announcement from the governor's office. I understand your excitement, so we can have a separate feature for that. So that we're bumping up against it right now. So I want to thank everyone for your dedicated viewership. I know that Mr. Broussard is quite elated on several fronts right now. And we, from the very beginning, this has been almost a decade, it's hard to believe, try to do everything possible to get this right wrong. Maybe it'll get done, I sure hope so, because what happened to him is inexcusable. And that's why, if people say, my God, you've got Billy Broussard on again. Yes, I do. And he has same way with Carl Cavalier. These are 2 gentlemen that if they tell me they want to do a sound off, I just say, you just tell me when and where. Well, usually we're going to do them here. Not always though. But those 2 gentlemen have an open invitation to do a sound off at any time they would like.
I would like to end with this. The same thing that was said to me. There's a commercial out there, choose your attorney carefully. Well, tell the people in Calcasieu Parish. It's my understanding you'll have an election coming up in the next year or so about judge. Choose your
judge carefully. There you go, because I guess one may be running for re-election.
Yeah, that's what
you hear, huh?
You got some billboards out there.
Okay, and I understand they got some billboards. Well, they got a lot of billboards. We'll let it go at that. Thank you, everyone, so much. We look forward to seeing you on another Sound Off Louisiana feature in the very near future. We got a number of other features. Trust me, hold on to your seats. We got some exciting features coming up. Thank you so much.